G'day listeners and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. We're the AFL fantasy podcast that doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the lesser knowns and the players who are going to bring value to your draft and Keeper League teams. My name's Heff and this week I am joined by my resident rookie expert, Tom Wyman. How you going, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks for having me back.
Nah, good to see you. Happy New Year and hope it was Christmas and everything was good and you're getting stuck into the footy season?
Yeah, it's starting to come around really quick, isn't it?
Yeah.
I feel like straight after Christmas, as soon as the cricket dies down, it's sort of footy season now. So, yeah.
Just ramps back up.
Not many weeks left now, so, yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be good fun. How's the off-season been treating you? Been up to much?
Not really, to be honest. I didn't really go away anywhere.
Yep.
A bit of camping, but just in SA.
Yep.
But yeah, it's pretty slow actually, which was nice.
I saw you hit up Live Golf on the weekend on the socials. Give us a rundown of that for those South Australians that can't get to an event like that.
Oh, you got to go. It's unreal. Like you can go. I love golf, so I am going for the golf. But there's so much more than that.
Yeah.
There's so much music and
it looks like a party because I've never been before myself. It looks like a party with a bit of golf on the side though.
Yeah, it is. It's whatever you really want it to be. Like on the sun, we did a fair bit of drinking and partying on the Friday and Saturday.
Yep.
But then Sunday I went with Dad and we sort of watched more of the golf.
Yeah.
And that was really good.
Good experience.
We got some great spots. It's really accessible. Like you can get so close if you want, or you can, stay further back. It's it's awesome.
Yeah, it sounds pretty awesome. I reckon next year I want to go. I wanted to go on Friday because this weekend, because there's heaps of practice matches and stuff like that, I like to keep up on that sort of stuff just for the podcast. This is like kind of work for me now, so I want to be like on top of that. But then I was like, so I can't go to that. But then I realised I could have gone on the Friday. Yeah. But I looked at the tickets and because Dom Dollar was paying.
That was the only sold out day, I think, because of him.
It's completely sold out. The only thing was like a $400 package or something. So I was gonna just give it a miss. But then I realised that Geordie DeSena, regular guest on this show, was managing the stage at Live Golf. So I spent the whole Friday pestering him to get me in for free. But because he's got this good little gig going on at the Live Golf, he didn't want to ruin it, which I completely understand. But I was just annoying him all Friday. Like, oh, can you sneak me in now?
No, it's interesting. Yeah, Friday. I think the concerts afterwards really add a lot. You get a lot of people there that have probably never hit a golf ball themselves. Yeah. But it's good. Yeah, it's nice.
I'm starting to get back into it. I used to play golf a lot when I was younger, before I had a kid.
I'm addicted to it.
Then it just died. But I reckon I'm going to sign up at a club this week perhaps. So
wow.
I'm back.
Okay, that's huge.
Anyways, enough golf talk. Unless you really want to play golf with me here in South Australia, hit me up on the socials. But anyways, let's get stuck into the podcast. Have you heard of the new Keeper platform, Tommy?
I haven't.
You got a big sign behind you. You're not much of a draft. You're not much of a draft player, so that's I don't blame you for that. But it's basically it's a new fantasy football platform built for draft and more specifically for keeper leagues. It's got all the keeper functions built in and all that sort of stuff as well. Built by Ryan Power, who's the same guy who built Ultimate Footy back in the day as well. So absolute legendary product. Just a few things that have popped up this week. So I think we might have mentioned this last week, but the draft rooms are now open, so you can actually start your drafts and things like that. And it's an amazing interface and all that sort of stuff with all the pick trading and all that sort of stuff going on. It's so awesome. It's now got projected lineups in the drafts as well. So like when you start picking your team, it puts them in order for you. You can actually get a look at what you're doing. And one of the new features I've seen this week was the trade progression. So when you trade for a draft pick in a keeper league, and it just says like you've traded for pick whatever. If you go back after your draft, it tells you what player that pick turned into.
Okay,
so you can actually see.
Yeah.
Like for example, Richmond had
sense.
pick one this year. Now it's Sam Lawler. So like you traded if they were to trade pick one, they would have got Sam Lawler. So you can actually see what the trades were worth type thing. And I think it does it for the history as well. So you can go back like through
it'd be really
your leagues and stuff.
Actually.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to go back to like 2014 when we did our first draft and see what some of the picks turned into and that sort of stuff as well. So it's such an awesome platform. The other thing is lineups have been redone as well, so they look a bit nicer and neater. So there was a lot of people talking about that on there. But anyways, what are we doing this week, Tommy? We're talking about the Intraclubs, aren't we? And the practice matches. Is that right?
Yep, absolutely.
And the first one we saw on Friday was your beloved Crows. Did you watch a bit of that one?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, managed to watch a fair bit of it on the stream, which was really good.
Yeah.
So it's always nice when the club does that sort of thing.
How are you finding the stream quality this year? The Crows one wasn't flash. North Melbourne one was bloody sick.
North was good. Yeah, Crows maybe a bit of work. Definitely a bit of work.
They're out in the country though, so you can't what you reckon you
I think they're in Port Pirie.
So what can you really expect?
There's not much out there, really.
Out there, yeah. I'm surprised they even have internet out there, to be honest.
Yeah, that's
two screamers. So they probably did a good thing, all things considered. But tell us about the game a little bit. What'd you see? What was the structure of the trial and how did it look and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I think it was very much A's and B's. So a best 22 and a seconds, if you like. And no ranking was obviously the key.
Yeah.
He's so big in this Crows side now. Obviously had the Indigenous games. So, I mean, you add ranking into that and things do change a little bit. But it was good to see us, the Crows, without him because he has missed a lot of football.
What was interesting about ranking on the coverage, and Kay's brought this up a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if I necessarily didn't believe him. It was more that I hadn't heard as much coverage of this, but they were saying he's been like 90% midfield this whole preseason. So, see, I had not seen that anywhere in the news. So credit to Kays for, he said he had an inside word on that one. And then, they started to mention that in the coverage as well. So that's interesting for Rankin owners, despite he didn't play in this game.
Yeah, he's been, training full-time mid. So I think that's the next step in his game and probably the Crows as well.
Absolutely. And I think in the last quarter they did a bit of a, we'll talk about it a bit later, but they did best defenders versus best forwards. I reckon they put on a yellow shirt and mixed up the midfield a little bit. So it was a bit... The first three quarters, you get a good gauge of what the best 22 was.
It is tricky to follow when they do that, but I get why.
Yeah, exactly. It's not for the fantasy purposes. It's for them and then their supporters to have a look at. But anyways, Josh Worrell, what are your thoughts on him?
I really like Josh Worrell. I know there's his spot in the team is probably not set, but I think it should be. I really like him. I think he's a really good intercept defender, and I know the Crows weren't massively high on intercept numbers last year, but I think he's the one that can be the out-and-out gun interceptor. That I guess Duday was the last one that probably did that role for the Crows. But yeah, I love Worrell. Can play forward as well, but down back's where he's going to slot in. And, I think he can score fairly well too.
Yeah, I just noticed he popped up with a few intercept marks early on in the game. I think he had
Plus
close
sixes help, always.
Had a close to a 70 average last year, I think, as well, which is like, when you're, how old is he? Like, he's in his fifth year?
I'm not, he would be 23, perhaps.
So still pretty young for one of those kind of taller defenders.
Yeah.
It's just like, it feels like now is the right time that he might break into a side. And just the
he's had injuries, which haven't really helped at all.
Yeah.
I think he was injured for the latter part of last year.
Yeah. I don't usually go for players like him, but he's on my watch list. Like, I'm keen to see how he goes against Port Adelaide on Friday.
Yeah.
See if he can kind of repeat those efforts. Riley Thilthorpe, what's your take on him? Like, looks good, but I don't know. I'm not sold on him being a huge fantasy scorer.
No, I don't think fantasy. I can't see him being massively high on the fantasy radar. But in terms of as a player, I love it. But I don't know if his game translates to fantasy.
He was getting
unless
those,
he gets more ruck minutes.
Yeah, he was getting those pinch hitting minutes. But like I always say, they tend to hinder a key forward a bit more. I think because it's like. And I've said this a million times, apologies for repeating myself to listeners, but they go into the midfield when they could be staying forward and kicking goals. You know what I mean? They probably miss out an opportunity for a goal or two. Yeah, as well.
Yeah, that's a fair point, I guess. And I just think he's a forward more so than a ruck, long term at least. So, yeah, I mean, he's so massive for the Crows structure.
What do you think is the plan after O'Brien kind of moves on?
I can't see the club having one. I think it's... Nick one from somewhere else.
Try to bring out one.
Strawn's not up to it.
But he's the same age as O'Brien.
Yeah, and he's a great sample ruck. Probably the best in the sample now that Harry Boyd's gone to St Kilda. But I know McAndrew's floating around the place, but
that's right. He was really good in this game.
Yeah, he was really good actually. I think Mark Bickley was on comms and he noticed how good he was against Rob.
Yeah.
But to be honest, whether it's Draper from Essendon, I'm not sure.
Heard a few rumours like that with Nick Bryan coming through.
Always going to get rumours like that because he's South Australian as well. But I genuinely don't know the plan because Rob's good, but I don't know if he's he's not the future. A
bit like Melbourne where you've got no plan B or something, whatever's going to happen. But anyways, we'll wait and see what happens there. But yeah, more to the point, Riley Thilthorpe was getting a few ruck minutes there, but I don't think it's going to be anything substantial to boost his numbers, that's all. All right, so we saw Max Michaelaney, and he had like a few stints in the midfield last year. It was more of as like a stopper than anything. We only saw him for like 5-10 minutes before he dislocated his thumb. But he looks really attacking off the halfback. Is that something you could see happening this year?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think when he first came in, he was sort of this really dour lockdown defender who maybe got 8 or 10 touches, but really just locked down his opponent, didn't give them anything. But I think they're giving him a bigger role each year, and I think he's actually got really good speed, and his skills are very good.
Yeah.
Like, he's a great kick. So why not try and use that off halfback a little bit more in a more offensive way? Well, he's always going to be a great defender and very natural, but I think if the Crows can use him, more of a rebounder, I can see that really working.
Yeah, I'm going to probably bump him up the ranks just a tiny bit, I think, just because I liked what I saw from a quarter, and I might bring him down next week after this Friday, who knows. But
so he would have played... He would have played maybe 40-odd games already, and this is only I think this is his third year.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
So, the more games you get into...
I don't think he's missed a game, really.
Oh, barely.
Yeah. Not through probably
He played round one in his first year, I remember.
Yeah. So he's definitely in the best 22. And, he looked like he could be an attacking type off that halfback in this game as well. So
he's more than just a dour defender. Yeah.
Jake Saligo, how do you see him fitting into the midfield lineup? Because he was out in the wing a lot in this game. Were you expecting that?
Yes and no. I think the game that he plays, he can play outside and inside. But, it's interesting with Peatling coming in, what Saligo's role will be. I remember back to last year, he started as a sub in the first game, and I was absolutely shocked. I know he had an injury in pre-season, but he is definitely now in the Crows' best, top 10 players, in my opinion. But it's probably going to be frustrating for him because Peatling comes in and he's going to play inside as that defensive mid. And it might just be that Saligo gets pushed to a more outside role, which he is very capable of. But I still think he's got something to offer inside, but it must be frustrating for him.
Yeah, a lot of people are really high on him, and it just didn't look... I don't know, he's still the type of player that could play on the outside and score okay.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I think a lot of people are expecting him to get to that kind of 100-plus kind of guy eventually playing the inside role. And I find it really hard to see where a lot of those midfielders actually fit in. Even people like Crouch. I don't know, he's not the most useful player, but he looked like he's pretty much on a bench rotation kind of low time on ground kind of guy.
Yeah. I mean, he's got his limitations, Crouch.
Yeah.
I think everyone knows them.
Yeah,
but what he does do really well is his contested ball and that sort of thing, and there's still room for that in this side for sure.
Yeah, Peatling was quite in. Sorry, just to kind of train track. Peatling though was quite impressive in this game, kind of playing the role that we thought Saligo might as well.
Yeah, I think those two are similar in a way, but I just think Peatling's probably got the edge at this stage.
I think Mark
just because
Bickley,
Saligo can play a bit more outside.
Yeah, I think Mark Bickley was saying that everyone's scared of being tackled by Peatling.
Yeah, he's pretty ferocious actually, and the hair helps as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really looking forward to seeing him play.
Yeah, so it might be bad news for Saligo owners, but we'll see what happens this Friday. Hopefully it's all smoke and mirrors and everything's okay there. One thing that really shocked me was Wayne Miller straight back into the A-team. Do you reckon he plays round one?
I think so.
If he's fit?
Honestly, I reckon he will. He's been training there in the A sort of teams, when they do those drills and at training, all reports he's been in the A team most of the time.
Yeah. I just wasn't sure, given the injuries, whether easing back into it, whether, I know Cummings is probably the other one that we talk about in a second, but he was on the wing all day as well. I think a lot of people during pre-season were thinking he'll go defence. And with Laird going back, you've already got Hinge back there.
Chase Jones as well.
Yeah, so, who goes back there? One of your young players got pushed out. He was getting a bit of game time. Hugh Bond, that's the one.
Yep.
He might be someone who gets pushed out. As opposed, and Wayne Miller comes back into the side.
It's tricky across half-back. I mean, I think ideally we'd like to see Dawson play there as well because he's a half-back really, naturally. But, there's a lot of options there. I just think Miller might be ahead at this point. I know the club rates him really highly.
Yeah.
It's just injuries with him. Throughout his whole career, he's never been able to get a good run at it. But when he does, he can dazzle, sort of a very flashy player across half-back. But... yeah, there's all of a sudden, there's quite a few numbers there, so it'll be interesting to see where he fits in.
Yeah, and someone like Miller, I reckon, will slide in drafts because people won't want to touch him just given the injury history. But if he can put it all together and finally get the body right, he's an elite player in the making.
The talent's not.
He's 27 now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's getting on. He was in the Do-Day draft, I think.
Yeah, for a player that hasn't played, we might see a breakout year at the age of 27. We talked about Isaac coming on the wing all day. That's as the pre-season's gone on, that's probably been expected.
Yeah.
When you looked at the Crows lineup as well, they were lacking that kind of outside player as well. You've got Chase Jones, you've got Lockie Scholl, were kind of the mainstays, but Cumming kind of probably adds that extra bit of class to that outside.
I was going to say he's classier than those guys. So I think that wing spot's his for now.
Yeah, so do I. So probably bad news for those who were hoping he goes back in defence, but hopefully he can put up a good average on the wing for Isaac Cumming there. Sid Draper, a lot of talk about his back all pre-season. Looked fine to me on Friday night.
Yeah, how's that Rove? Yeah. That Rove goal was textbook. I think Tex was the ruckman.
Yeah.
Palmed it to him beautifully.
But if you'd watched his state league highlights and stuff like that and playing at the sample level, you'd expect that, right? Wouldn't you? It's the stuff he's been doing.
Yeah, that hitting the contest at real speed. And then, his first 5 metres of acceleration are awesome. So, and it's exactly what the Crows need.
So in the startup, in the redrafts for the dynasty drafts, you've got Jagger and you've got Levi as your first 2 picks. Langford and Draper are probably the next 2 that are being debated. Do you reckon that's the right order still? We haven't really seen Langford yet.
Yeah, I mean, Langford's going to be a star, no doubt. But I really like Sid.
Yeah,
I just think that the Crows are crying out for exactly that type, and he just fits the role perfectly. But one thing I would say is that I think the Crows will be really cautious with him.
Yeah.
They've shown held him out of plenty of sessions throughout pre-season.
I've been nervous he's not going to play round 1, but
I don't think it's guaranteed.
But I think seeing it now, I feel
he's probably firming like he will, but it might even be as a sub. I just think the Crows would be cautious with him.
Yeah, that's the only thing. If he doesn't play, it's not to do with not being ready for AFL level. That's for sure. It's more about
just be injury prevention.
Funny thing happened in our keeper league today. Kay's traded pick 4 for next year 2026 first rounder, and he decided I don't want the pressure of a top 4 pick, but you got 4 guaranteed 4 guns.
That's an interesting.
You cannot actually get it wrong this year. I don't think, because out of those top 4, it's clear cut. I reckon. So.
I think that it's easy to say. I just think they're all going to be guns.
Absolute clear cut. I reckon it's the easiest draft if you've got a top 5 pick. I reckon it's the easiest draft to make a selection in years, I reckon.
Yeah.
But anyway, Dan Curtin, people have been coming at me on the socials, mainly Crow supporters, because I'm just not convinced he's going to be a fantasy gun, Dan Curtin, that is, like people are suggesting he was. And his role, again, I know everyone's talking midfield, but it looks like they've kind of turned him into a third tall key forward. Played very well, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think it's going to get that kind of elite fantasy scoring.
He's just he's a bit of a, I don't want to use the term, but he's a bit of a unicorn, in that he just has the attributes to play literally anywhere.
Yeah.
He's got height, he's got skill, he's looking to develop that speed, that burst speed, good overhead, and he's 197 or 8 centimetres.
He's huge. 190. I looked this up the other day because I was looking up stats. How many players over 197 centimetres averaged 80 last year?
Yeah.
There's only one.
Who was that?
Harry Mackay.
Right.
Mackay. Can never get that right.
Yeah.
Harry Mackay. So that was the only one that did last year. So key forward. And that's not including rucks, obviously. So that. But yeah. So anyway. I think he's probably just. I just don't see him as a midfielder. That's the thing.
You don't see him as a mid?
Nah. Yeah. I feel like he could be a midfielder, right?
Yeah.
But if you use him in the midfield, I don't think you're using him properly. Because if you look at the Crows midfield as well, it's starting to roll 4, 5, 6 deep. And none of those and they can be good midfielders. I'm saying they won't be a midfielder that's a good fantasy scorer. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because those taller guys, those big midfielders very rarely are. They're usually quite impactful when they go in there. They can body out blokes. They can
but it's not
take
the
marks around
numbers.
the ground. Yeah, but they're not getting the sheer volume that other midfielders do. So
I can't see Curtin, say, averaging 30 a game.
Yeah, exactly. Ever. I can see him being a good midfielder, don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But just not a fantasy guy. That's all.
I think with Curtin, his role is just going to be interchangeable within games and then game to game, if you know what I mean. He's going to play some time up forward.
Yeah.
He'll play on the wing as a roaming.
It's almost like an Adam Goods type situation, you know? Maybe not to that. That's big shoes to fill, but that's the kind of Pavlich type thing. Yeah. Well, Pavlich was a gun fantasy player at one stage. So
I mean, I could see him. I'd love to see him play that old Tom Lynch role.
Yeah,
Crows Tom Lynch.
And to be honest, being a forward who can go into the midfield, you're probably going to be an 80 to 90 guy that will score pretty well. I it's just when people see him going like, oh, he's going to be like 110 plus midfielder type thing.
I can't see that.
Yeah, that sort of stuff. Anyways, the only other thing I kind of noticed is there's in the B team at the start, there's a few players that we've had our eye on for the preseason. Luke Nankervis is one, so he was in the B team at start. So it looks like he's probably not in contention for round one, just given that Laird going back and Miller are returning, all that sort of stuff. There's no halfback role, and then the wings look pretty sewn up there as well. And Billy Dowling in the twos as well. Still look good for the twos. Like he was one of their better players, but looks like he's just a little bit off the pack. Any thoughts about those two?
I'd love to find a spot for them, but all of a sudden the Crows sort of have like a little bit of depth, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong, but I'd love to find a way to get Nankervis into that side. I just think he's really got it. But
they probably turn more into stash options because if they're not getting opportunity, they might even seek trades and stuff like that as well in the future.
Nankervis is the one out of those two. I think Dowling will be a pretty reasonable footballer, but I think Nankervis can be really good. So
I agree. I've got him on my rookie list, so I'm hoping he pops at some stage.
There you go.
All right, do you watch any of the North Melbourne Intraclub?
Not really, so I'll let you take over.
Well, any players you want to know about in this one?
Maybe Tom Power.
All right, so Tom Power. He had this is strange because you've heard he's been training as like a halfback, and I guess like in intraclubs you've got to find six midfielders type thing to play, but pretty much spent the whole game in the midfield and looked really really good. They were talking about like big summer, like has put on fitness size, all that sort of stuff.
I feel like we've heard that from Powell though for the last few years.
I know, so I don't know if it's a different case, but yeah. So many people like wanting him to get that dual position status play on the halfback line and stuff like that, which still could happen, like when they put their full team together. But at the moment, looks like he's playing in the midfield. So yeah.
And what about Daniel? Obviously, Caleb Daniel, that new recruit from North. Kick-ins would be the thing for him.
Yeah, 100%. Taking all the kick-ins and just playing that sweeper halfback role as well. Look classy. I'm not sure. I think the numbers were still pretty good. There's a few like amateur statisticians out there, myself included, that on Saturday. No, when was it? No, yesterday it was. About half an hour before the game started, I chucked into ChatGPT. Build me an app that helps me build count fantasy scores. So I gave them the lists of both teams, and then it comes up with like buttons that I click every time they get a kick or whatever, mark, whatever.
That's unreal.
And like literally like half an hour before the game, was ready to go by the game. And so I spent the whole afternoon yesterday just kind of counting everyone's fantasy score, going through, just clicking on kick, mark, handball, sort of stuff. It's way harder than it is, but I kind of used it throughout this, so I didn't get to use it in this game, but for some of the ones later on in the week, I used this kind of app to count fantasy scores. So I got a fairly good idea of what they've scored. But regardless, Caleb Daniel I think would have scored at least 90 plus in this game.
I mean he does what he does type thing. Yeah, I think he's going to be a pretty good pickup for North, and it's maybe going to ease some pressure on Sheasel.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Sheasel's probably going to go into the midfield a bit more. I think he was in there the whole day, like almost like 100. I think it was like 90%.
Well, that releases him.
Yeah. 100%. It's going to be interesting to see who else plays across that half-back line. I've got down here as well, like Darcy Tucker was actually in their A team in this one as well. So he was playing that half-back role. And like when you think about it, Fisher's injured, Shees was going to the midfield. McKercher kind of played a forward and wing role, but his numbers weren't too bad in this game. It's just the role didn't look nice. So like there is spots across that half-back line as well. So like Darcy Tucker could be a player as well that does kind of get a bit of a gig across that half-back line. Also, we've been kind of talking about it on Discord a while back, like, and it wasn't anything concrete, but Louis, good friend of the pod, Louis, he was saying that like he reckons, this was ages ago, he reckoned Finn O'Sullivan was going to end up on the half-back line.
Yeah.
Because that's what they did with McKercher last year, what they did with Shees the year before that. He had like this inkling that that's where they'd play him. He was very much like wing all day, but on the commentary as well, they were saying like he might end up playing anywhere. So they even said like there's every chance you end up on the half-back flank at some stage, half-forward flank, that sort of stuff. But Finn O'Sullivan, he actually I know he had like a pretty interrupted underage career, but he actually looks pretty ready for round one, I think, pretty ready for AFL level. Is that consistent with what you say?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the thing about him in his juniors was that he could have an impact sort of anywhere, and that's sort of adds to what you were saying there about what North might look to do in terms of his use. I think he'll slot in. You just got to find a spot for him. Yeah. And I think they will. They've just got to play talent. They're still in that stage. So, but probably one at the other end of his career, Luke Parker. I'm really interested to see how he actually he goes at North. I don't think he's done yet.
No, definitely not. In this game, like Parker was like early on, I think he was in the starting midfield CBA setup. I think a lot of the first quarter he was there, but then kind of really turned into that kind of forward mid split later on. The interesting part was when like end of each quarter, I think it was, or half, can't remember, they did these like match scenarios. Where it was like they reset the time, reset the scores, reset the times, and like North are down, they have to try to win the game from here.
Or save the game.
For every one of those, Parker went into the midfield as the kind of starting guy.
Okay,
there.
so that might say that last 5 minutes of each quarter he might.
Yeah, correct.
Go
or
on
like
ball.
or if they need him, kind of like what Sydney did last year when they're kind of running out of options, he'd go in there and do a job type thing. And I think with Simpkin playing the Indigenous game as well, he's probably prepping himself for a role in split with him as well. So I think that's probably what's going to happen there. But like as a forward, like I still can't see him going any lower than like 75.
I could see him having some games where he kicks 4.
Yeah, correct.
Or maybe 5 or something like that. Yeah.
So I think he can have a pretty big impact. It might just not be the ceiling that people might expect as a full-time midfielder, but I reckon as a forward, he's going to be pushing that top 10 range, I think. So pretty decent option there. And I'm not too concerned with the kind of lack of midfield time that he got in the second half on the weekend, but there's a few midfielders.
I mean, we'll probably get onto another one here. Will Phillips, he's another top pick that North just really need to work, I think.
100%. Like he was getting, like again, he was another one, kind of like Power, just getting a stack of midfield time in there as well, and looked good in there. Like he genuinely looks like he's taken a step up.
I hope
pre-season.
So. I feel like they really need him to.
Do you kind of feel like maybe it's the Wardlaw being out injured that he's kind of been forced into it and he could be dropped out?
Yeah, I mean, it's so frustrating for Phillips. When he was drafted, I just thought he'd be a star straight away, like we've seen with Sheasel and I guess McKercher as well, maybe to a lesser extent. But
him and Powell the same year, weren't they?
Yes, and I think so.
They had very similar like underage numbers like as midfielders as well. So I feel like one of those two kind of needs to break out this season. But like you never know, like through injury and whatever with Wardlaw out, it could just provide that opportunity for him to step up as well. So I wouldn't be like too concerned just yet. But it looks like early on he might get some opportunities. So I'm pretty happy with that. The other one they gave a big rap in now, that midfield group, is Luke Urquhart. Do you know much about him?
A little bit.
I think they call him Gav, like Gavin Urquhart, the old North Melbourne player that used to play for them as well. But
really good numbers.
Huge
as an
numbers.
underager. He's sort of, but he also had that bigger frame. So it's a classic type of.
Yeah, he's massive. I think he was in the B team, but huge numbers underage, and just the commentary was just giving him big raps. So, and big underage scorer as well. I think the knock on what is him that his kick's not great. Needs to work on his skills a little bit before he's ready for AFL level. But he's definitely a stash option, I think, for the future. As is Taylor Goad, just more so as a handcuff for Cherry. Like it feels like he's the genuine backup option now. Like if
definitely.
he goes down.
Yeah, I'm big on Taylor Goad.
Yeah,
he's obviously South Australian, and he's actually from Wollonga, where I sort of work. So I'm a massive fan of his. I was kind of hoping the Crows might actually draft him as that long-term role replacement.
Yeah, would have made sense.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to probably take the reins after Sherry moves on from North. But I really like him. Super athletic. I'd just love to see him get a sprinkle of games here and there.
I don't think it's going to happen because Cherry's only 25 as well, so he's probably got like another 7 or 8 years. Unless it's more that if the injury strikes, which has happened, like last year was Cherry's first full season. I just feel like it felt like last year if Cherry were to go down, they had like Teakle and I think there was one other that they could roll through, like maybe even Larky, but like they had nothing else to fall back on.
Yeah.
Whereas this year it feels like they've just got you've got a genuine handcuff option if you own Cherry, I think.
I'd really like maybe the Crows to even target Goad, to be honest, when he comes out of contract. I just think he's got huge potential. Obviously, basketballer with that height. But some of his tap work's really, really good, and his follow-up work. Yeah. He's super quick, actually. Like he's not one of those lumbering tall rucks. He's different.
Yeah, pretty athletic.
Absolutely.
So I reckon, if you own Cherry, you target Goad late. But also, if you just want a stash option for a future ruck with potential, he might be a guy just to think about as well. Probably won't play consistently at North Melbourne for a long time. But
I'd just really love to see him get maybe 2 or 3 games for the next couple of years just to see what they're working with.
Yeah, same. We'll move on to the Essendon versus Western Bulldogs practice game. Have you heard, did you see any of Dylan Shield in this game?
Not a heap, but I've heard a lot about Elijah Sardis.
Yeah, we'll get on
I guess he's a bit of a buzz name, isn't he, in this pre-season?
We'll get on to Sardis in a sec, but Dylan Shield, my goodness, played that half-back role and looked good. All pre-season we'd heard this kind of heard this rumor that he was playing back there, and I guess like Nick Martin had gone onto like the wing and moved into that half forward kind of role, that between there, so more of an attacking wingman. So that's kind of dashed that kind of half-back hopes for him. But it looks like Dylan Shields is going to slot completely into that role and score. Do you have any faith in him getting through a full season and scoring okay?
I don't know if you could have much faith. I'd love to see him. I'd love to see it happen. He's 31 now. I'd have to look that up. Feels like he's been around for ages.
Yeah.
Because he's one of those like inaugural giants. So
makes sense then if he's 31, yeah.
Yeah, so look, you'd just love to see him get a full season together because he's obviously like a star when he's up and about, but just the body's let him down so much.
Yeah, I think he's going to go, like, in your top up, your redrafts, he's going to go relatively early, though, I think, because, like, especially if you're going to kick, like, in our league, when you're going to kick 12, he's, an 80 caliber defender if he gets everything right. So,
like, he scores.
Yeah, you just have to wait until he gets that defender status in the sixth round. But, yeah, your boy Elijah Sardis, was very impressive. Like, played inside mid all day. Parrish was out, so I guess he just kind of provided that opportunity. But, look, the goods. I was always a big believer that he wouldn't actually make the transition to an inside mid.
Yeah,
I thought he'd be outside a bit more.
I remember you saying that.
But he actually looks like he's put on a little bit of size. Actually looks pretty impressive. It looks like Archie Perkins is just not going to get that inside go anymore. It's going to be Sardis. Probably the one taking stringers CBAs. Yeah. So I'd be very I reckon he could push that kind of 30 to 40%, maybe even more this season. Depends on Parrish if he's out and how long he's out for. But yeah, we could see a lot more of Sardis in the midfield this year.
I feel like Essendon really need guys like Sardis to take the next step.
Yeah.
They're just crying out for something different in that midfield, aren't they?
Well, they finally got Caldwell what Merritt's going to do. Up. Yeah.
And Caldwell now's, gun. Yeah. But you just need something more.
Yeah. And he kind of does provide that kind of balance between, I think, Caldwell and Merritt as well, kind of can play inside, can play outside type thing as well. So he actually looks ready for an inside role this season, which is I thought he was just like, a skinny wingman type thing, but he actually looks like he's ready.
A bit more than that.
Yeah, it's like definitely. He's ready to go. The other one that's been like a bit of a buzz all pre-season is Sard O'Hawley. He was on the wing. I think a lot of people were expecting maybe he was the one that would play Dylan Shields' role / Nick Martin's role from last season. He'd be the guy to slot in. But he looks pretty set on the wing, and if you look at the Essendon, the wing situation, they do some random stuff there. They were playing Nick Cox there at stages. Yeah. They were playing Jones there at stages. They've got the young fella Archie Roberts. Archie Roberts. That played there a bit too. I could see this kind of mature age kind of player coming in and taking a role there as well. Xavier Dersma is probably the one that's locked in, I think.
Yeah, he'll have one wing, I think, definitely.
But the other one is up for grabs, I think, and O'Hawley could be the guy that gets it. But yeah, I think we can roll out that kind of halfback role. The other one was Hobbs too. Midfield and found a lot of footy on the day as well. So I think he's listed as a forward this year in fantasy as well. So were you big on Hobbs as an underager, or has that tapered as well with the last few years?
Probably tapered. Yeah. I mean, he had really good numbers, probably because he, again, was more developed than a lot of the others in his draft year. I think he played Ballarat or the Rebels, as they're called now. Yeah. But yeah, I was a fan of his, but he probably just hasn't taken the next step. I thought he'd actually make a big impact straight away, but he hasn't really at all. Yeah.
If he can get that, if he can be that stringer type as well, I think, if he can kind of play that forward midfield combo, he could get a run. But
I just thought he'd be an out and out ball midfielder by now, but it's just not. I don't think it's going to be the case.
Yeah, I was absolutely spewing when Port took Josh Sin over him, and probably still am, to be honest. I'd probably still prefer Hobbs.
I suppose.
Although Sin's probably talking about breakout season.
Yeah, a bit of a role change this year, maybe.
Yeah, I've been to training a few times, and I still think his kicking is very questionable. But anyway, the ruck combo for Essendon is another thing we probably need to discuss as well. So they played the Bryan and Draper combo, but Nick Bryan is clearly their number one ruckman, I feel.
Yeah, he has to be, I think.
And if you're talking Draper potentially being in talks with the Crows next year, I mean, it could be number one next season.
It sort of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I would be targeting Bryan now.
Definitely.
And then hoping that happens. Similar, last year I traded for Jack McRae, hoping he'd get a trade, and did. It's kind of one of those risks that might not happen.
Try and see what might happen at the end of the year.
Yeah, I reckon it could be, and then Bryan kind of develops into that gun ruckman.
Bryan's their man, I reckon.
Yeah, same. So, especially on the back of this game. And the other one for Essendon before we move on to the Dogs was Isaac Kako. What an absolute gun.
He's a gun, and he's always going to stand out with that hair. Yeah, exactly. He's got the, I guess, dreadlocks,
yeah.
But I think he's an absolute gun.
Unlikely to be fantasy type, but
I mean, he's not really going to score super well, I wouldn't have thought.
Nah, but like he'll do like 4 or 5 things that are just like, well, absolutely blow your mind.
Yeah, there'll be chase down tackles, for sure. And then
flashy goals.
I know he's really good mates with Nate Caddy as well, so there's a bit of speculation that could be a really awesome 1-2 punch up there. So,
any Bulldogs you want to hear about?
I like Kennedy, to be honest.
Yeah,
I'm just really interested. I'm still surprised somewhat that Carlton let him go. I mean, I understand it, but I think he's still got a big future.
He played a lot of the midfield in this game, like pretty much 100% mid in this game, but got to remember there's like no Bont, no Libba, no Treloar. Richards was the only one there.
That's your starting centre bounce, really, isn't it?
And then second half, he didn't really play that much as well. So
it's hard to get a read.
It's kind of good that maybe he's like the more senior body that they might be, putting him on ice for this week or whatever. So that's probably a good indication, but like, there's no way he's top 3 in their midfield pecking order. Maybe even top 4, like with Richards in there as well. So
Richards would be above him. So
are you going to kind of follow a fifth stringer? He does have the forward status, which is his saving grace, which means he will roll in there and score okay. And he does get tackles and stuff in the forward line, so he can score. Like, I see a world where he still scores 80 this year. Yeah, but just might not be a huge midfield scorer like he was a few years ago.
I sort of just wish he went to a club where they could guarantee him like centre bounce time,
like
or
somewhere
more
like
of it,
West Coast or something.
Literally like West Coast or Richmond.
Maybe not Richmond, but
it's just be interesting to see what he could score because I feel like it'd be quite good.
Yeah, the halfback role at Western Bulldogs is a bit of a talking point. There was no Bailey Dale playing, but there's 2 guys they kind of played back there, and that was Joel Freesia and Harvey Gallagher was the other one back there. So Freesia had a massive game, like absolutely racked it up. Basically just played Bailey Dale's role though. So it's really hard to get a read without him back in there. And then Gallagher was pretty similar, just kind of got into good positions down back to just receive the ball. Like a lot of the, when they're on the halfback flank and they can't find an option, he'd be the guy in space that they kind of move it to and then to get the ball moving through.
Get out of jail,
that sort of stuff as well. So like those 2 back there. And the big thing for me was like, can they all coexist? But when you think about it, like they did have like, back in the day, they had Bailey Dale back there, they had Ed Richards back there, and they did have halfback. Joe Hannison in there as well. And all 3 of them, I think Richards was probably a little bit younger and a bit raw, but they were very close to 80 averages, all of them, you know what I mean? So while that might seem crowded back there, I think I can see a world where Gallagher, Freesia and Dale do score pretty well together if they are in that halfback line. Yeah. But I'm not convinced Gallagher is going to be in the defence. I think we might find him on a wing or a bit further up the ground at some stage, but we'll wait and see what happens there. And then, speaking of wings, Sam Davidson, do you know much about him?
Not really, to be honest.
Yeah, no. Mature age player picked up in the draft, but they put him on the wing and they rotate like quite a few guys through there, but I think there's a spot up for grabs because like when you think about their wingers, you got Bailey Williams, who seems to be like their main kind of winger out there, but the other year we've seen like Caleb Poulter put through there. I cannot remember the guy's name, number 13, but Lockie someone or no, anyway. But yeah, there's like a few other guys that they've rotated through there, but no one seems to really
lock it down.
Yeah, lock it down. Yeah. Whereas I feel like he played the role all game and was pretty solid there. So he's listed as a forward also. So just one to think about.
Yeah, that's handy.
As a late pickup because he could get a bit of a run there. And then Bramble was probably the kick-in taker for the Bulldogs, but there was no Dale in the side, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, how can you read into too much there? But
correct. Yeah. Well, surely you had a look at the Indigenous All-Stars game.
I really like the format as well, regardless of how the teams sort of play. I really like the Indigenous All-Stars team. I know there was like a quote from Darren Burgess, who's the Crows fitness guy, and he was the fitness guy for the Indigenous team. Yeah. And at one point, he was in charge of rotations. Yeah. And at one point, they needed to switch a small forward out. And they had all these guys lining up on the bench, like Rankin, Charlie Cameron, Liam Ryan. Yeah. Just ridiculous talent.
Who you choose out of those guys, something.
It's insane, some of the talent running through there. But
it was just awesome to see what it meant to all those boys as well, like being together in a team and like, and just, the support and all that sort of stuff. Like it's the Simpkin goal, the emotion that came out, like it was just it was good sport, good sport theatre.
I think it's got its place in 100% pre-season.
Yeah. I'd love to see more of them.
I mean, we are sort of fortunate. I don't think there was any injuries from it.
Not off the top of my head.
Or not major, at least. So that would be the thing,
I think Switkowski went down, but that was probably it. Yeah.
But if if Rankin did his hamstring, it'd be shattered.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
That's
there's
always that risk, I guess.
But then they play one less kind of practice match though as well.
Yeah.
So like kind of does, and it was shortened quarters and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and it was fairly light.
Yeah. So hopefully that kind of stays, because I'd love to see it rotate as well. Like I'd love to go watch it at Adelaide Oval.
Oh, for sure.
Stuff, like,
Not
awesome.
just Freo. It's everyone.
Yeah, correct.
Everyone gets a crack. So really enjoyed it.
So we'll start with the Fremantle boys, because it's a bit hard to take it out of the All-Stars guys, because like they're going to be playing different roles for their own clubs and stuff like that.
It's a completely different team.
I do like Jai Simpkin was amazing, but is he going to get that same midfield role at North Melbourne? Probably not, with the players he's got around him, the way they're trying to develop.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and then Lawson Humphries was the other one that really stood out for me in terms of scoring. When you look at the stats, like he's that class halfback flanker.
Yeah,
still concerned about the ceiling, but I think consistently he's going to be like at Geelong. It's although the way they play, we'll talk about Geelong in a second. I've kind of come around on that one. If the way they played on Monday is kind of going to be how they're going to play for this season, it might be a bit different. But we'll talk about that a bit later. For the Freo side of things, though, Nathan O'Driscoll, what did you make of his game?
Yeah, he was pretty good actually. I'm just sort of waiting for him to sort of take the next step. But yeah, he's always been that sort of really, really high endurance guy who can sort of break lines, might not be the word, but run with the footy.
No, he did kind of show on this game that he could do that.
Yeah, but it's always, I guess, I've wondered whether he could go into more of an inside role, but I'm not. I've got question marks over that, because how do you fit in? I just don't think he fits in that side.
Yeah, there's no way he fits into that midfield.
It's a fair midfield.
The thing is, like, what happens a lot in modern day, I guess, midfields is like they almost have like a fourth midfielder that starts on the wing,
definitely,
then works his way in. Like
who's not like a natural winger.
Yeah, like Willem Drew does that for Port Adelaide quite a bit, and Ollie Wines does it a bit too. They'll start out there and then they just drift in as the next one, and I guess they kind of use the halfbacks as the kind of drive. Instead, might be a bit different under Port's game plan this year, but you do see that a bit in certain clubs as well. Like I think George Hewitt sometimes does it too. There's a few that kind of just come off the wing and then play as that extra midfielder. Like, which in all honesty, I think you could see O'Driscoll doing that, but like his running, like he just ran like all day on that wing, back and forth, so deep either way. Like I think some people were saying he's playing half back, but I was watching the centre bounces pretty closely. He was on that wing.
He was actually just running.
Yeah, just running so deep either way. And then the tackles as well. Like he just looked like a good inside midfielder, but playing on a wing. So you could see him kind of play a bit of that role as well. So that's probably the main one that I saw on the night. The other two that probably they've been on people's lips. Well, I guess it's more about ruck roles and midfield roles and stuff like that. But Liam Reedy was obviously the number one ruck in this game. So Sean Darcy being out injured, obviously.
How long is Darcy out for?
I've lost track. He's been in and out, and then off to Qatar, and then back again, and then injured again. So I'm not really sure. But I feel like it's going to be a little while. But this is more about Luke Jackson than it is about Liam Reedy, I find. But it's more about the it looks like they're not going to use Jackson as the ruckman, which is what everyone wants to see from a fantasy perspective. Saw him being played as a midfielder, though, in this game. But like I said before, very rarely do those kind of giant midfielders actually become accumulators. They're useful. Like, their impact, exactly, around the ground.
Numbers,
And they're good in real football, but you don't see them. They're not generally the guys that, you'd probably rather them up, forward getting a +12 when they get a mark kick goal.
Yeah.
To do that, they do that probably more quickly than they get 4 possessions, 4 kicks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it's interesting, but it's probably still positive for Jackson owners just to see him in that midfield, because he could develop into something there as well. Like, who knows? He could be a freak and play that role well, but we'll have to wait and see. But it's better than being resigned to Luke Jackson being a full-time key forward, I guess.
Yep.
And the other one was Erasmus. And like, there's a lot of talk about him like bursting into the side this season. But like, again, I don't know what the role is going to be. Like, you agree with me that there's no way he's getting into that starting midfield, right?
Oh, no. Yeah. No, the Freo midfield, I mean, you can mount a case it's the best in the league. Yeah,
correct. So, like, he's starting on that wing and probably half forward, and kind of similar to what I was talking before. He's kind of one of those guys that can push inside, because he does look like a player that's kind of taken a bit of a leap in the last kind of 6 months type thing, and his waffle form will indicate that as well. But I think this is probably going to be a year for him where he cements his spot in the side over actually becoming a gun scorer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. What year is this for him? Is it
fourth? I reckon.
Yeah, I reckon it is. Yeah.
So I reckon that's probably going to be what we're getting out of Erasmus. So those hoping for a breakout, like, it's not that he's not good enough. It's just that how do you get a fantasy-friendly role in that side? It just doesn't seem feasible.
No, it's like, I think it might be similar to O'Driscoll. I mean, it's just going to be tough to see him getting into the, you say, into that role.
Now, onto the West Coast versus Richmond practice match. I counted every stat for this game.
Was that with
my new
system?
app? It's still tedious. Like, it takes longer because you have to watch it and pause and stuff like that. But it's probably quicker than getting the pen and paper out, you know. But this is how thoroughly I watched this game. But the thing is, like, you're watching it and you're like, all right, kick, and then you move on to the next thing, like, directly. You're not actually like, you know, and then there's a tackle there, but did he affect the disposal? Who cares? I'm just looking at the next. Like, it's hard to like actually keep up with like everything that's going on. And sometimes, like, even though you're watching extra closely, I feel like you kind of separate from the game because you're just focusing on the stats,
on those like sheer numbers of it,
as well. Yeah. So, but these are the kind of the few takeaways. Did you watch this one?
Yeah, bits and pieces of it, definitely.
What do you think of Jack Graham?
Yeah, pretty good actually. I think, you know, I think they really need him to step up and be that not like a shield, but like take some of the hits for those younger guys.
He was like the enforcer in there.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it, actually. I think he's still got plenty to offer. I don't think he's going to be a star.
Yeah.
I think that's fairly clear.
I see him averaging 80 this year.
But I think he can still be quite solid.
The other thing as well, I guess, is like Yo is out at the moment as well. And he kind of played a similar type role to what Yo does as well.
And there's no Sheed, obviously. So,
I don't think Sheed's as much of a factor. I just think Yo might. But I still think he has a place in there with all of them. Like, if you look how young and inexperienced their midfield is.
They need these guys. Yeah, exactly. You can't have a midfield full of youngsters.
Yeah, exactly. They'll get torn to shreds.
But also they won't. Yeah. You need to balance it. Yeah, I think they will.
Yeah. So I think he's a good option this year. I think he's an 80 average forward. Like, you know, if not, he's going to be high 70s.
Yeah, I think probably agree with that.
Yeah,
high 70s definitely.
He's going to be a pretty handy acquisition for those coaches who have him. Bit of a bonus, I think, because a lot of people draft him not really expecting the trade at this time.
I think the trade definitely makes him a more impressive option.
Definitely. Ruben Jinby looks like a player who's taken a leap. Were you of the opinion that Jinby was going to be a gun? Because you hear like mixed reports like about Jinby. Like, some people say like he only had a good carnival and hasn't really played good outside of that. But I know then other people kind of look at him and see just like gun midfielder. What were your initial thoughts on Jinby, and do you think he's going to take that leap?
I think I probably thought that he might be a bit limited in that. I think he was, again, one of those guys who was massive, like, as a 16, 17-year-old.
Yeah.
And just played that, like, brute mid role, but also across half back, and came in, and I think he had a really good couple of first games.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I just be questioning his ceiling a little bit, just because I just think there's not a lot of room for growth there physically, so I'm not sure how much. You know, he might turn out to be an absolute jet, but I'll probably see him as more of a B+ at this stage.
I liked him on this half-back role, running out of defence a lot more than I liked him in the midfield. I think in terms of a fantasy player, I think he's got more to offer us in terms of fantasy scoring. Just kind of that, like if there's when the ball goes into opposition's defence, like they're going to be scrambling a fair bit for it, and kind of guy that can just kind of win the footy and start getting it moving their way. Like, I think he'll be the kind of guy.
I feel like he's quite a reliable player.
Yeah.
But yeah. Do you reckon he misses a week for that little shove?
Probably, if you're thinking about outcomes. Like, I'm so bad on that sort of stuff.
I know, we're not even into round 0, and we've already got like MRO.
I'm so bad with most AFL news if it doesn't affect fantasy scoring. Like, and I guess obviously when he's missing, but like, I don't really pay too much attention to that. So like maybe I can see probably a week or something like that. But
yeah, it's pretty. Like, it's not
too
hard.
much. Yeah,
it is hard.
It's hard to understand, like, know their intent in those situations as well.
It's so split second.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah. Liam Baker, a lot of people talking up his role in the halfback flank, which it was there in this game. The halfback role is just probably quieter than expected, but you think it's probably to be expected?
I think, to be expected. New team, but I think, he'll be good this year.
Yeah, I think so. Like, it was really good. Shortened game, 3 25-minute periods, and Richmond very much played like just keep the ball off the opposition a lot as well. So that we'll talk about that when we get to some of the Richmond players, but that could be a bit of a tactic that could lead to a few things here and there. A kid that impressed me was Elijah Hewitt. I think he only had like the 20-odd points or whatever from the amateur statisticians, but spent a fair bit of time in the midfield and just did some nice things around the ground. He was a pretty classy. Like, we're looking at his underage numbers. They weren't huge in fantasy, but he just did some nice things in his debut year that kind of gave you a bit of.
No, he's going to be real good.
Yeah.
I think if we're not that we're comparing him to Jimby, but I think because he's a very different player to Jimby, but I think I'd have him higher on the talent scale than Jimby.
Yeah,
I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, I reckon so as well. He's going to be a good player.
Good foil for Harley Reid as well.
Yeah, definitely. He's still probably a year away from being a fantasy breakout.
Definitely. But, I'm not sure he's going to be a fantasy star.
Yeah.
But I think he's just going to be a really good player.
Yeah, I think so as well. And can go forward too if you need him as well. I don't think we're any closer to working out who the number one ruck is.
I got no idea.
Matt Flynn seemed to be the preferred. Like he played 2 of the 3 periods, but then went off a bit later. I think he actually copped a knock or something. Yeah. And Bailey Williams just took over.
And then you've got Barnett still there. Who I really like Harry Barnett. Actually.
Doing the stats, both Flynn and Williams have like the same hair. They just shaved their heads. They look exactly the same out there.
Makes it hard.
Yeah,
but I could see all Barnett, Flynn, Williams all getting cracks at some points.
Yeah, I'd love to see Barnett actually start playing some senior footy, but probably still another year or so from getting that body to the right size. And Jack Hutchinson is the other player that everyone's talked up in the preseason, just because he's a forward playing up on the wing, and he definitely had that role. Just didn't get much of the footy, but did some nice things when he did have it, which is probably what I expected of him as well. So those expecting him to be a huge fantasy scorer might not be there. I don't know how cheap he is in Classic. He might be someone to look at there if he is cheap enough, but I expect he's still going to be inflated for the return you're going to get. Onto the Richmond sort of thing. This is what I was talking about before. Jacob Blight scored 67 points. Now, he's not someone I'd really go near at Richmond. He's kind of like the intercept kind of key defender. Yeah. Not going to be great for fantasy scoring, but it's more indicative of the style that Richmond were playing, just lots of slow play. Like no option, let's just kick it sideways, take a mark, reassess, that sort of stuff. I reckon there's going to be a lot of that this year, just to kind of stem the bleeding at Richmond. And
they're just so young, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So more so for owners of Loston, owners of Short, probably Banks as well. If you're planning on drafting him, because he looks like he's got a halfback role lined up there. There's going to be a lot of points coming from this. Do you reckon that's a legit tactic? You could probably exploit a little bit.
Yeah, I guess so. Because I think that's something the Crows tried back in, I think it was 2020.
Yeah.
I could be a little bit off there with the years, but just because there was not a lot of experience there, just tried to, bit of damage control maybe, just to own the footy a bit, and I don't think it really worked for the Crows. But let's be interested to see how Richmond go with it.
I think if Loston's like in a non-contending team in your league, might be someone to target on the cheap. Yeah, I reckon. Would be good. Because I reckon he's just going to get a lot of chip around in that half-back line. Him and Short probably going to spend most of the day kicking it to each other once the opposition kicks a point. So, and then the other one, we mentioned before, Sam Banks just looks like he's got that half-back role, like maybe even stepping into Rioli's role that he kind of leaves as well. And he found a bit of footy in this game, but probably just lacks the polish which most Richmond players do.
I mean, there's so many gaps there from last year's team, isn't there? So many roles that need to be filled.
Definitely.
That some people have got to take them.
Yeah, 100%. Looking at the players that kind of rotated through their midfield, again, really hard to kind of get a gauge without Taranto, Hopper, Prestia all in there. But they rolled with Thompson, Dow, Jack Ross in there, and Ryan Mansell actually went in for a few, had like a mid-forward split as well.
As in sort of inside?
Yeah, but just kind of went into a CBA, stuff like that. Or start on the half forward and then kind of push into the midfield as well. Mansell looked lively. I think he kicked maybe a goal. There wasn't too many scored for Richmond, but just got a few CBAs in there as well, which I thought was interesting. Then the other two, like Thompson, Dow and Jack Ross, legit look like senior, mature players in there, and look like they could be relied on. And
they sort of have to be, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. But again, with the other two out, you just cannot rely on them. But I legit think Thompson, Dow is probably their fourth mid. And knowing the injury history with someone like Prestia and all three of them, really. Yeah. He could be getting a fair boost in there. Yeah. And likely, most of his scoring is going to have to come through tackling because they're not going to be winning that much of the footy. But could be an option, late. I wouldn't go too early.
I think he has to be an option because, unfortunately, you just can't rely on Prestia.
Yeah.
Taranto and Hopper have had their issues too. So he might be it might be games where he's the second mid.
So when I compare him to Jack Ross, I reckon Jack Ross is probably more likely to kind of find himself out on a wing type thing.
Whereas Dow's
probably going to be the inside. So if any of those guys get injured, it's basically been for the last few seasons, I think he's going to go in and I don't know what he averages. Like, I wouldn't say 80, but it could be like a mid-70s, just someone that you could have on your bench type thing, then bring him on if you're really struggling or if you're in a deep league, could help you out. I think Thompson Dow could be a guy that goes around that 70, 75 mark if a few things go his way. So, yeah, interesting one there because they've just got nothing else to rely on. And unfortunately, we found out today Sam Lawler's going to miss a bit of footy. What's got a fracture or something?
Was it cheek?
Jaw, cheek? Yeah, something like that.
Right. So, yeah. That's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, but he showed some good signs. Like, he could be a fantasy player one day.
I think he will, actually, to be honest. And, that's one I wasn't sure about. I wasn't sure whether he'd be like a, like you were saying, like an impact per possession player or a numbers guy. But I think he might be able to be a bit of both, to be quite honest.
Yeah, 100%. So
I think he showed a lot of good signs. I think kick 2, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, and just like big body, wasn't afraid to go get it himself, win the footy type thing, and then either have a shot at goal or dish it out to a player. Or
proper mid forward as well.
Took a good mark as well when there was a good contested mark in there as well. So, looked the goods there. Just disappointing. He's going to be missing a bit. On to the last game I watched yesterday. Again, counted every stat for this one. Never again. Probably will still do it Friday.
Yeah, that's a serious effort from you. I didn't know about that.
I'll do it Friday probably as well for the day game, but I can't do the Port game, unfortunately. But anyway, for Geelong, Bailey Smith, did you see much of this?
I saw bits again, and I saw him wearing that headband, which I'm pretty sure he can wear it, but he has to have the swoosh on the Nike swoosh on the inside now.
Okay, that's what people tell me. Yeah, okay.
I thought it looked awesome, to be honest. Yeah, and I really like that Geelong kit. So,
why is that? Is that because they're not sponsored by?
Well, they're sponsored by Cotton On.
Yeah, of course. So they can't wear them.
I guess you can't really. Yeah.
What about their boots? Anyway,
I don't know. I think it's awesome. Need a bit of flair.
Yeah. Oh well, turn it in. I was wondering what that group chat message meant out with the swoosh or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, but he only played a half of footy, but got 54 points by my count. So played on the wing as well, which might affect other people's roles later on, I think. But like the fact that he played outside in a team like Geelong that isn't great for outside players usually, and still scored 54 points.
I mean, he's a natural scorer, isn't he?
Yeah, he's probably too good for the podcast already. Yeah. But anyway. Zach Guthrie is a player that I've been kind of off a little bit. I'm always off Zach Guthrie, and people have been saying, hey, is he a legit option this year? And I was going to say no, but like the way that they played this year, like yesterday, it was very much like, take a mark, go back on your mark, assess the options, try to pinpoint another option. It was very much like a very +6 game plan, and Zach Guthrie got in, on the end of a lot of these kind of kicks as well. So if it's an actual thing that they're going to be employing this year and not that run and gun kind of like they sometimes switch to like in that Port final and stuff like that, I think it depends on opposition. But yeah, if they're going to be playing that keep off kind of football in defence, he could be a good option there as well. Do you know much about Connor O'Sullivan?
Yeah, I really like him. I think he's just going to be a jet.
Yeah.
Super tall, like ruckman height. But I think maybe like De Koning, really, actually.
It was just so impressive, like the way he could just get to contests, like for a big guy.
He's a gun.
Yeah. So I don't know, like, and just taking marks back there as well, like some really good intercept work. Like, I don't know what his role ends up being, but he could be the long-term like Stewart replacement back there.
I mean, it's hard to say no.
Yeah.
I just think he's an awesome player.
Very athletic for a taller type.
Super athletic. They've got a few of them now. So, I think Geelong have got another gun on their hands.
Yeah. One player that actually looked like he was AFL standard for a change was Jai Clark also. He had the 76 points, but played a fair bit of midfield, spent some time down back a little bit as well, which I found interesting, but just kept getting in the right spots to find the footy. Do you think like it was bound to happen for him eventually, and do you think it could happen this year?
I thought it might happen a bit sooner, to say the least.
Looking at his junior kind of scoring.
I mean, he's been touted as like the next Selwood.
Yeah.
Which is probably pretty harsh on, but...
pretty harsh on Selwood, I agree.
Pretty harsh on Selwood. Yeah, well, looking back now, I really thought he'd come in and make a big impact, but he just hasn't so far, so I hope so, but... I'm not really sure, to be honest. I can't see it being this year.
Nah, like if you look at their midfield, it's getting deeper, I guess, but it's probably not the strongest line. And it's hard to like, if you were to pick 4 players that would consistently go to centre bounces in there, you're going to be picking probably Bailey Smith.
Yep.
Dangerfield played forward for the whole game, so I'm not sure what the go is there. Who do you go for after that? Tanner Bruhn? Probably after that.
Bruhn now. Bruhn I think's a gun.
And then probably just Holmes. Holmes played a fair bit in there in this game.
Yeah,
but
is he going to play inside?
Yeah, or does he play half-back? But in this game, he was in there quite a bit. It's very hard to pick their starting four. Like, if you look at Mitch Nevitt as well, he had a heap of midfield time yesterday as well. And I don't know if that's a sign of things to come, because Bailey Smith did play on the outside, and Nevitt is probably more of an outside player. So I reckon they'll probably swap those two guys on later on. But, it's very hard to pick their starting midfield, when you think about it. So
especially when you got Danger playing forward. I mean, it's hard, isn't it?
There's every chance that once he gets a bit fitter, he comes back in.
Cam Guthrie's injured again, so
that's probably so he's probably not coming back.
So there's space there.
Sam de Koning's another one that everyone's kind of looking at in the ruck. But he got given an absolute bath by Lloyd Meek. He's just not a ruckman, I don't think.
Nah.
Yeah, so
I think he's just a key defender.
And I think people wanted him to, who cares if he's not a ruckman, go in there and score. But he just couldn't get near the footy, because Meek was just better than him around the ground as well. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. But who knows what they're going to do.
I think he's a fullback.
Yeah, I reckon it's going to be Reece Stanley and Blitzarves doing all the ruck work again, which is so boring for fantasy.
Yeah, it is super. I mean, how long have they been doing that for now?
Yeah, exactly. We just want something to change. Toby Conway, I think, has been ruled out long term. I think as well.
That sucks.
Yeah.
He's had such a good debut game. Showed heaps.
Yeah.
Just got to get the body right.
Can't get it right. Onto the Hawthorn side of things. We'll get through this pretty quickly. Cam McKenzie had 82 points. He looks like he's going next level, I think. Used in the midfield. The only thing is, we said this last year, but it was only his second season. So going into his third season, I think he gets a decent run. So McKenzie had a great game. James Sicily was interesting because, we've been saying all preseason, is he going to play defence? Is he going to play forward? Yeah. In defence, pretty much, I reckon, 75% of this game with a bit of a stint up forward as well. So, that's encouraging for owners. So, monitor what happens there.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see how they work out that defence with Battle and Barras.
And Barras didn't play as well. So, that's the other thing. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting whether Sicily just plays almost not loose,
and they just play where they need him.
Yeah,
if there's a
swing,
if they've got three key defenders, he might go forward to match up on one of them, and if there's another taller forward,
day to day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But encouraging for now. Will Day, I don't even think I need to talk about him. He should be too good for the podcast. It's just on injury last year that he's not, but had a massive first half. I think he had a 50-point second quarter by my count, and then slowed down in the second half. And I think he was rested by halfway through the third quarter. He was off, but we'd seen enough. If he's fit, full preseason, as much as I don't want him to be good because I traded him, I think he could have a massive year.
All Australian?
Yeah, or that kind of calibre. Yeah, definitely. But and another interesting thing about the Hawthorn mid-zone, they all rotated forward as well.
They all rotate, don't they?
Yeah. So there's a sneaky chance of DPP for some of them, depending on how much time.
Whether one of them spends enough time down there.
Get that 35% threshold. Could happen that's how they rotate all forward. So,
be interesting to see. I know Will's played a lot of half back. So I don't know if I've seen him play so much half forward. But
he only had 40.
I'm sure, he can.
He only had 26% CBAs, and I think he was on the bench for some of them. But he might get close to that 35% threshold. If he continues that way,
he can play anywhere. So
the other thing is where they just kind of easing him back in as well, coming off injuries and stuff like that. So have to wait and see. And the only other one that caught my eye for Hawthorn was Henry Hustwaite. Only come in the last quarter, but had 20 points in that last quarter. So he's a stash option for sure, I think. Anyways, we'll get through these questions because we're just hitting the hour mark. I might get you to read the questions, Tommy, and I'll answer them.
All right. This one's from Ty Miller. Thoughts on Connor Nash yesterday and his prospects for the season?
Pretty similar to just a standard Connor Nash kind of performance, I think. Yeah. The only thing is that forward thing, that he was kind of pushing forward as well, a bit more as well. So if he ends up with forward status as a part of that rotation, I just don't see him hitting the 35% threshold, but I reckon you just get carbon copy what you got last year. Maybe even slightly less if Will Day's back through the rotation a bit more, kind of squeezing out. And McKenzie, I think, is another one's going to take a big step up in the centre bounce count as well.
They've still got Ward as well. So
Ward was probably playing a bit more outside.
Yeah,
he did play yesterday.
More wing.
So if he plays, but because Harry Morrison had a big game as well, so I don't see him sticking around forever as well. So I think Ward might take that spot too on the outside. Yeah.
All right, this one's from Colin Ron 1. Harvey Gallagher played off half back. What's his likely role this year based on competition, and what could he average? Yeah,
I said before, I think he does. I don't know if he holds that halfback spot. I'd love it if he did because I'm his biggest fan. But I just get a feeling he might be pushing up to that wing. Depends what happens with Sam Davidson and a few of those other wingers. I'm not sure who takes that other wing role there. But I've got a feeling he plays a bit further up the ground on the wing. But, anything can happen really. And like I said before, they can coexist, the three kind of defenders, the running defenders at Western Bulldogs. So I wouldn't be ruling it out, that's for sure.
Yeah. This one's from NBashin2. Are we buying into the hype or are we cold on the Fraser?
No, I'm buying into the hype a little bit just because like we saw, like I'm not saying 100 plus or anything like that, but he could go close to the 80 mark, I think. Maybe more, probably 75 I'm expecting. But he does look like that's the role he's going to settle into on the halfback flank. Probably a little bit concerned on what Bailey Dale does when he comes back and if he eats up some of those things, but he looked very impressive on the weekend, so I'm buying in.
Yep, and this one sent in from Simon Evans, 76. Am I right to be getting 2024 Finn McRae vibes from Elijah Sardis hype in the community? Lots of love, lots of want, but...
Was Finn McRae wasn't a top 10 pick, was he?
He wasn't top 10, but I think he might have been first round. I think that was that year where the first round went on for 25 picks or something.
Yeah. I reckon he was probably closer to the 20s mark though.
I think he's more of a second round.
Look it up for me while we do it. But like, I feel like Elijah Sardis has a lot more, as an underage player, had a lot more kind of class and hype around him back then, I think. And he just needs to take that next step. And maybe the inside role it is, but I reckon I would have Elijah Sardis in a class above Finn McRae.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
At the same point,
McRae was pick 19, 2020.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so a bit later on. And I think some of the McRae hype is being Jack McRae's brother as well. Like, it probably pushed him up more than he deserved, I think, as well.
No, I agree. I think Sardis is a level above.
Yeah. No, I'd be happy with Sardis if I own him at the moment. So, sure.
Yep. Draft Bible asks, who's the biggest preseason hype player you've seen that's turned into a total flop over the years?
Who was the Hawthorn? No, I can't remember his name. There was a Hawthorn halfback flanker that had like a 3-game end to the season. Cannot remember his name though. I drafted him and I was big on him as well, but he was probably the guy that my members are probably screaming at me the guy's name. He had red hair, halfback flanker. It was probably around 2020, 2021,
right?
Maybe 2019. I can't remember his name. I'll look it up later on and I'll tweet it out or something like that. But yeah, he was probably the one, but I cannot remember his name. Sorry about that. Next question.
All right, so Liam, AFLW Fantasy asks, so in this week's episode of Keeper League, should I just expect Heff to spend 15-20 minutes talking about how awful hand counting stats is, and then maybe 5 to 10 on how camera angles in the preseason are complete dog?
Not 15-20 minutes, but you'll get 30 seconds of it right now. It was tough going. The West Coast game, camera angle, like you just employ me to stream it. I'll use my cameras I've gotten here. Like, they don't have as good a zoom, but geez, I reckon I could put up better quality than that. And yeah, counting stats is fucking hard. You can see why like Champion Data has like callers and like they probably take it by teams as well. Like
and they've got like 6 people.
Yeah, probably. Exactly. Yeah. It's and they probably split it up or whatever. Yeah, it's bloody hard to do.
Yeah, it's not really a one-man gig, is it?
Nah, exactly. It takes a long time to do. You need those 6 people. Next one.
All right, Jason Miller asks, hearing a lot of positive things about Nathan O'Driscoll, would you consider him for a mid-5 or 6?
Maybe a 6. Like, I look at my team. I always find that M7 slot hard to fill. Last year I had Xavier Dersma in my M7 role, and he was I had a pretty strong midfield, I guess. More of that kind of low 80s type scorer. And if you can get a low 80s in your 6, your 7 kind of spot, I think that's probably where you want them. And I think O'Driscoll has the kind of tools to be very similar to Dersma, whereas he can kind of run hard either way. Probably wishes he was an inside midfielder, but is not quite there, but will kind of do things in the game that kind of like we saw with O'Driscoll with the tackles and stuff like that. Yeah. Whereas Dersma's probably one who kind of pops inside for those cheap +6s and stuff like that, but he'll make it up in other ways, I think, as well. So, yeah.
Yep. All right, last one by Matt Roach. Are you doing an event for Gather Round?
Oh, yeah. I've been meaning to kind of, I guess, talk about this. Probably not at this stage. Like, a few reasons, I guess. Last year, we got a bit of sponsorship to do it, and we probably just won't get that this year. So it'd probably just be too much of out-of-pocket expense for us to actually run it. But also as well, like, my son's at that age where he really wants to start going to the footy and stuff like that. So, like, I plan on that night that we'd usually have it, just actually take him to the footy that night as well. So not work over it and stuff like that, and get him to kind of enjoy the weekend as well, because he hasn't really experienced it yet. So
it is an awesome weekend. How many games are you going to?
Oh, geez. I have tickets to 6 games.
Yeah. Oh, you beat me. I think I've got 5.
Yeah. So. But two of them at the same time, so I've got to decide which one I go to.
Oh, okay, right.
So looks like I'm going to go to North Melbourne versus Gold Coast in the Barossa.
Awesome. Yeah, I was so tempted.
My family lives in the Barossa.
Yeah.
But also good friends with Mick Barlow's brother, so North Melbourne assistant as well. Yeah. He's coming over for the weekend. We're going to drive down to the Barossa and go have a look at the game down there. Hopefully meet a few North Melbourne players and stuff like that. So, and then, come back to town for the night games after that. So, probably will end up going to 5. But just got to figure out what I do with the other games and tickets and stuff like that.
It's a great weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the greats. I'd rate it, up there with Live Golf.
Absolutely. Well, I've been to Live Golf, so I'd rate it much
higher.
Those
are the two. Like, they've changed
the reason to come to Adelaide. Yeah. Nah, it should be good fun. I haven't done a country gather round game yet as well.
No, neither have I. I haven't even been to
suburban.
Norwood.
Only done Adelaide Oval. So
I really should have, but I think Norwood would be awesome.
Yeah.
And such a suburban feel.
Yeah, and then Barossa, that's where I grew up type thing as well. So it'd be good to actually get back there and check a game. So, Anyways, we'll leave it at that because that is a long episode. Thanks, Tommy, for coming on the show once again. Good to have you back.
Yeah,
we'll definitely get you on throughout the season to cover a few round reviews. But check us out on the socials at Keeper League Pod on all of those. Check out the website keeperleaguepod.com.au. Sign up as a member while you're there and support the podcast and ensure it survives on into the future. And we'll be back next week to talk about the other practice matches that are going to happen over the weekend. Support Keeper Fantasy. Check out SC Rings. I think I've covered all the plugs there, Tommy.
Well done.
Let's leave it at that. See you later.